Have you ever stopped to think about how a company like Netflix handles a literal mountain of data? I mean, we're talking about an amount so vast it's almost impossible to picture. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on their absolutely brilliant solution, a kind of digital librarian that keeps all that chaos in check.
So, to really get what they built, you first have to understand the sheer scale of the problem. Netflix's data warehouse holds hundreds of petabytes of information. Now, what's a petabyte? It's 1,000,000 gigabytes. And get this, they add more petabytes every single day. This isn't just big data, you guys. This is a data tsunami.
But, the biggest headache isn't just the sheer volume of it all. It's the shape the data is in. As all this information streams into their systems, it arrives as millions upon millions of tiny, fragmented files. Just imagine a library, right? But instead of nicely organized books on shelves, you've got millions of loose pages just scattered everywhere. That's the kind of mess Netflix was dealing with.
And a mess like that, it has some serious real-world consequences. Trying to find any piece of information slows to a crawl. The computers waste a massive amount of energy just trying to piece all those fragments together. It bloats your storage costs, and maybe worst of all, it just buries engineers in tedious, mind-numbing manual cleanup work.
So how do you even begin to solve a problem like that? Well, you build a smarter librarian, and that's where AutoOptimize comes in. It's this incredible system designed to work tirelessly in the background, automatically tidying up that data mess before it can ever turn into a full-blown crisis.
And this quote from the Netflix technology blog really just sums it up perfectly. The goal wasn't just to clean house, it was to centralize the whole effort. You see, instead of having hundreds of different engineers all trying to solve the same cleanup problems over and over, AutoOptimize creates one single intelligent system to do the job for everyone. It completely eliminates all that duplicate work.
But here's the thing. AutoOptimize isn't just some brute force cleaning robot. It's incredibly intelligent. It operates on 3 core principles, and they're all designed around this one beautiful idea: do the absolute minimum amount of work necessary to get the maximum impact. It's all about working smarter, not harder. So first up, timing. The old way of doing things was to clean everything on a fixed schedule, say once a day. But that's super wasteful if nothing's actually changed, right? AutoOptimize takes a just-in-time approach. It only springs into action the very moment new, messy data arrives. If there's no change, it does zero work. It's just elegantly efficient.
The second principle is all about scope. It's tempting to try and make every single file the absolute perfect size. But that quickly leads to diminishing returns. You end up spending a ton of effort for a tiny improvement. So, AutoOptimize avoids this trap by performing what it calls essential optimization. It gets the files into a good enough state and then it stops. No wasted cycles.
Now, this third principle, minimum replacement, this is a total game changer. Imagine you find a single typo in a 100-page document. The old way was basically like reprinting the entire thing. AutoOptimize is so much smarter. It just replaces the specific little files that need fixing, and it leaves everything else completely untouched. This just drastically, massively reduces the workload.
Okay, so we have the principles, right? But how does the system actually make its decisions? How does it know when a bunch of data is messy enough to actually need cleaning? Well, this is where we get into the real secret sauce of the whole thing.
I mean, this is the crucial question, isn't it? For a system to be truly automatic, it can't just be guessing. It needs a totally reliable way to measure the messiness, and it needs a crystal clear threshold for when it's time to act.
And the answer is this really clever concept called partition entropy. And that sounds super complex, I know, but you can really just think of it as a messiness score. For every single part of the data warehouse, AutoOptimize is calculating this score. A low score means, hey, everything's neat and tidy. But a high score, that's a red flag. It's a mess of tiny files that needs attention, stat.
So this score is calculated using a method called mean squared error, or MSE. The key thing you need to understand about it is how it works. It heavily penalizes outliers. A single teeny tiny file is going to raise that messiness score way more than a file that's just a little bit off the ideal size. This forces the system to prioritize fixing the biggest problems first, and it pushes everything towards becoming uniformly sized files, which is exactly what you want for the best performance.
And this right here, this lays out the entire decision loop. It's so simple. So new data arrives, and the system instantly calculates the new messiness score. Then it compares that score to a threshold they've already set.
If the score is low, it does nothing. That's that work smarter principle in action again. But if the score is high, boom, it triggers a merge job to clean things up. It's a simple, elegant, and completely automated process.
So this all sounds great in theory, but what about the actual results? Did it work? Oh boy, did it ever. The numbers really do speak for themselves, and honestly, they're kind of staggering. Okay, so the main goal was to get rid of all those tiny files, right? Well, AutoOptimize achieved an 80% reduction in the total number of files in the warehouse. Let's go back to our library analogy for a sec. That's like taking all those millions of scattered pages and binding them into 80% fewer books. Just a massive, massive improvement. And this slide really shows those work smarter principles paying off. Because the system is so intelligent about when and how it works, it ended up performing 22% fewer partition scans and, get this, a whopping 72% fewer file replacements. It's not just doing the work, it's doing it with incredible efficiency.
And what does all that efficiency lead to? It leads to this number, a 70% savings in compute resources compared to their old system. That's a huge reduction in the amount of processing power they need, which translates directly into saving a ton of money and energy. But here it is. Here's the ultimate payoff. The number that matters most to the actual people who need to use the data. Up to a 60% improvement in performance. All this behind-the-scenes tidying meant that Netflix's data scientists and engineers could get the answers they needed from the data much, much faster. Now, the numbers are obviously impressive, but the real impact here goes even further. This is about more than just being efficient. It's about fundamentally changing how people work with data at such a massive scale. So let's just sum it all up. AutoOptimize creates this wonderful cascade of benefits. It saves money on processing, it makes storage more efficient, it makes queries faster, it reduces data lag, and crucially, it boosts developer productivity by automating all that tedious cleanup, which frees up brilliant engineers to go tackle new challenges instead of constantly cleaning up old messes. And that really just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The next time you're scrolling through Netflix, just remember that underneath that slick surface, there are these incredible, invisible engines like AutoOptimize, working constantly to make it all seem completely effortless. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other silent, brilliant systems are out there humming away, powering the digital world we use every